Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, June 26, 2019 meeting of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, the Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, and Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. It's nice to see our friend Lee Bastian in here today. Thank you for coming. I know you had a little issues, but it looks like you're on the road to recovery. So welcome back. Let's begin with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk be kind enough to call the roll?
Howard.
Here.
Baker. Burris. Here. Janda. Here. Holmes.
Here.
Joyner. Mackey. Here. Euler.
Here.
Wright. Here.
All right, we have a quorum. I understand there's no closed session. Is that
No, sir, there's no closed session this morning.
already? I'll move to item D, approval of action minutes, May 22nd, 2019.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We'll go to agenda review. I see we have a sound one colored.
Yes, sir, there's a change in our recommended action for item I, and we'll go through that when we get to that point. But yes, there's the salmon or pink sheet before you.
Already. And any other issues on the consent agenda that any board member wish to remove for discussion? Anybody in the
We're not
audience?
to consent yet.
What is it?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to correct the chair, but I think we're on item E as opposed to,
Oh, I'm in the agenda. Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. Man, I'm glad you showed up today.
I am too.
Yeah.
Man, maybe
Any
I'll-
other items on the agenda that anybody needs to? Okay, all right. We will move to public comment. Now is the time for anyone from the public that wishes to address the agency board on any issues not on the agenda. Now is the time to come forward. Seeing none, now we'll move to the consent calendar for the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Anything on the consent that needs to be pulled for discussion? Anyone in the audience?
Move consent.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Now we'll move to item H, the consent calendar for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Are any items on this consent calendar to be pulled for discussion? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Move approval.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item H, the consent calendar for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none. Now we'll move to item I. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. This is the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Planning Agency fiscal year 2019-20 budget and authorization contract employee.
Yes, sir, I'll be presenting this item. The item before you regarding the CTSA is two recommended actions. One is to consider and then acting as the WP CTSA board adopt the fiscal year 19-20 budget, and then a secondary action to authorize the executive director to execute a limited term contract for transit management. The item, the budget before you today, is a update in costs related to the increase in costs for Healthcare Express or Health Express, operating costs, and also efforts to implement the short-range transit plan by expanding Health Express service hours. So that is the main change related to the budget. The other two items of significant change are planning activities related to opportunities that we may have for funding for transit service refinement in the county that we would like to move forward with this year to get ready for those funding sources, the one of which being our expenditure plan, and then also funding from SACOG and the Air District and others, which is a unique opportunity that we don't usually have. We do not have enough work, however, to justify a permanent full position to do this, and so what we're requesting is board authorization to give me the ability to hire a person to manage this for a term not to exceed 1 year, and then utilize that services to take advantage of those potential funds. So that's the main change this year. We would recommend that you approve both actions.
All righty, any questions for staff? See none, anyone in the audience wish to address the agency board on this action? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion to approve. This is the part where someone makes the motion.
I'll move approval.
It's been moved and seconded.
Just reading.
To approve the item I, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, we'll move to item J, Placer County Freeway Service Patrol, change order number 6. Mr. Melko.
Thank you. Today we're requesting the board to authorize the executive director to issue change order number 6 to the Placer County Freeway Service Patrol contractor services agreement. So for those that are relatively new to the board, just as a matter of background, so we have a freeway service patrol program. It's a joint program with Caltrans and California Highway Patrol. And it's privately operated trucks, publicly funded. And the service operates on Interstate 80 up to Highway 49 and State Route 65 up to the 12 Bridges area. And currently, we have two tow trucks that operate in the morning, Monday through Friday, from 6:30 to 9:30. There's 2 tow trucks that operate in the evening from 4 to 7 p.m. And then there's a service truck, also known as an Adam truck, that operates Wednesday through Friday, the same evening time frame. Now, for those that remember, a couple of years ago, we had some budget difficulties with the Freeway Service Patrol program. This is a program that's funded with the state, and local funding is provided by federal congestion management funds that we administer. In the past, we have had Indian tribal funds and air pollution control district funding, but those fund sources are no longer available for this program. So back then, we proposed to eliminate the Adam truck in the evening, and the board expressed some concern at that point in time, and we ended up figuring out a way to do the Adam truck 3 days a week. So since then, the voters have approved and passed, well, Senate Bill 1 was passed, and the voters affirmed Senate Bill 1, and so now there's a pot of money available statewide for the Freeway Service Patrol program. And that's about $25 million a year, and our allocation is $121,000. And so working with the CHP, both the CHP that manages the Freeway Service Patrol program, as well as the CHP division and the Auburn division, we came up with how to use those funds. And so we're recommending to restore the Adam truck to 5 days a week, which is, I suppose, a good thing because the board expressed concern several years ago about eliminating it. And then we're also proposing to add an additional hour in the evening, so we would go 4 hours in the evening, both for the Adam truck and for the tow trucks. The CHP also recommended that we shift the service times because congestion and incidents are occurring earlier in the evening, and so we would shift the time from 4 to 7 to 2:30 to 6:30. And so that way you will see more Freeway Service Patrol service on 65 and 80 earlier in the day, 5 days a week. And so with that, it'll increase the contract for the remainder of the year by 14%, approximately 42,000 rounded numbers. And this was presented to the Technical Advisory Committee, and the TAC concurred with the recommendation. And so I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
I will note that you should have a brochure
Yeah.
on your dais there. And assuming that you approve this Change order number 6 today. This will be distributed by the Freeway Service Patrol operators to the public. There is a survey on the back, and the operator provides a code, and the person can go online and provide the survey comments.
Oh, good. Is there anyone in the audience wish to address us on this item? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve. It's been moved and seconded to approve item J, the Placer County Freeway Service Patrol Change Order number 6. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none. We'll now move to item K, Regional Transportation Plan Outreach and Schedule. Just as information item, presented by Kathleen Hanley and Aaron Hoyt. Morning.
Oh, thank you. I always forget about that. Don't present often up here. So I'm here to talk about the Regional Transportation Plan public outreach that we've been conducting for the past few months at PCTPA. So some background, one of PCTPA's large duties is to update and maintain the Regional Transportation Plan. We do this every 5 years. We're required to do this every 5 years. Generally speaking, we've done it every 4 the last couple rounds to coordinate with SACOG's MTP update. This plan looks out 20 years and outlines the goals, policies, funding, and investments that PCTPA and our partners are going to undertake over the next 20 years. So as part of this process, as one of the major planning documents for transportation funding in our area, we wanted to have a robust public outreach to talk to our community members about what is in the plan. So the process that we undertook this year was different than what we've done in previous years. Building on the success of the Bikeway Master Plan update and the Dry Creek Greenway Plan update, where they've utilized online survey workshops and had success, we use that same method here with 3 online surveys, each open for 2 weeks and each covering a different topic over the course of 3 months. So these were publicized across the jurisdictions on your websites and on your guys' district newsletters and email updates. So thank you to you and your staffs for helping us spread the word about these surveys. And this survey software that we use, which was new, was funded in part by a Caltrans Rural Planning Assistance Grant that we received to do more robust outreach for the RTP update this year. So we received more than 2,000 responses. The final survey closed on Monday, and I think it's probably closer to 2,300 responses. So that's a lot. And most of the folks live in Placer County. I had a question on there that had people put in their home and work zip code just to get an idea of who is filling it out. And as you can see in this map, this shows where the responders who answer that question live within the county. So there's a pretty good spread, which has been difficult for us, especially to get responses from mid-county and high-county folks. So we were happy to see that this time around. Some of the people who answered the survey don't live in the county, but work in the county or travel through. They usually put something in the comment about why they felt they had some relevance to this plan. So really good engagement, which we were happy to see. Now, 2,300 responses is great, but it also means that there's been about 40,000, 50,000 data points that came out of these 3 surveys. So it's a lot of data to go through. I'm going to be talking overview and summarizing as much as I can, but I'm happy to take more detailed questions or follow up with you guys if you have particular interest in some of the questions. So the structure of this presentation, I'm going to go over the survey results from each of the 3 surveys and then summarize that with what I think the key findings are and how they're going to affect the RTP as we move forward. And then I'm going to hand it off to Aaron, who's going to talk about how this fits into the overall RTP schedule and next steps. The first survey was the most general survey. It talked a lot about goals and trade-offs. So this first activity, the screen on the right shows you what the survey screen looks like for those of you who didn't get a chance to look at it. So it asked people to decide between these trade-offs that we traditionally have to make decisions about in transportation investment. And some preferences from the community were really strong. So for example, almost everyone preferred adding highway lane miles to managing traffic some other way, which I think is consistent with what we hear a lot from our community members. But some of these preferences were less strong. Like for example, in the transit issue from local transit or commuter transit, a lot of people put kind of in the middle. They weren't really sure which one they would prefer. So it gives us an idea moving forward, but it's also really helpful to not just force people to choose one or the other, to actually get an understanding of how strongly our community members feel about this. The second activity asked them to prioritize between these 7 goals The top two goals that folks prioritize were reducing highway congestion and reducing local road congestion. In fact, like 60% of people who responded to the survey put these as 1 or 2 in some order. And then the remaining 5 options are split pretty evenly on people's priorities. The third activity in the first survey gave folks these 6 markers that you can see along the left side of the screen, and they could drop them anywhere on a map in Placer County and to indicate where one of these issues exists, and then they could provide a comment about what the issue is there that exists. And so I've shown you this map. This is where everybody put their traffic congestion markers. So even though we have such good responses from Mid-County and High County and people in more rural areas, there's really consensus across our diverse communities on where our congestion is. And I don't think this is surprising for any of us, but it's good to validate that our communities are on the same page about what's happening. The second survey got more specific and talked about funding. So this activity, the first one, they had 20 coins and they could allocate them across different public activities. We wanted to get a sense, as we've done in other surveys, particularly for the funding strategy, of where transportation projects align in other public services that public funds pay for. So as you can see, participants spent on average about half their budgets on transportation, and that road widening and road maintenance were the highest budgeted items, topping out schools, neighborhood safety, parks, trails, and recreation. And so clearly it's a top of mind issue for our communities. The second question served both to get an understanding of where people's priorities were on funding sources and also to educate our community members to some extent on how transportation funding works. Now, as you guys all know, transportation funding is very complicated. So to some extent, we had to simplify some of these things. But how the activity worked is that those sliders allowed folks to choose, like, for example, on the top one, how much gas tax cents per gallon they would budget. And they could see how much a change in cents per gallon would affect the overall budget of the RTP. So that's about $6 billion of investment projected in the RTP over 20 years. And it gave them an understanding of changing the gas tax gives us this amount of money, changing developer fees gives us this amount of money, to get an understanding of what the relationship between these funding sources and what revenue we actually bring back is. So on the left, you can see what's outlined in the RTP. This is roughly correlates to the revenue projections that will be in the new RTP update, which is that there's about a 68-cent gas tax, the maximum developer fees, quarter-cent sales tax, that's our LTF, and then we're estimating a half-cent local transportation sales tax measure in the South County, and no road usage fee, which would be sort of a per mile or some congestion management fee, which we don't have proposed, but I just wanted to put it in there to see what the pulse was on that matter. And then on the right, you can see what the community use response is. So on most of the funding sources, they're on the same page. But as you can see, they've lowered the gas tax a significant amount, which is consistent with public opinions on the gas tax in our communities. And that they added road usage fee, which doesn't exist, to compensate that because the activity required them to kind of balance the budget. So now I'm not sure that this indicates that road usage fee is more popular than we estimate it to be, but it did give folks the understanding of the give and take of how transportation funding has to work. So then once they had allocated revenues for those funds, they could similarly use a slider system to spend those funds on various activities. And I tried to equalize these activities on a per unit basis so they can get an idea of about how much it costs to repair a mile of road versus add a mile of sidewalk versus add a increase in transit route. And as you can see in the bar chart on the right, this is the average response, and most folks dedicated most of the money to road repair, and then the next amount is highway widening, followed by local road widening, which is consistent with the way the expenditures are laid out in the RTP. So the third and final survey, which just closed on Monday, was the most specific and essentially had 2 activities where folks were asked to prioritize 3 projects in the Western County and 3 projects in the Eastern County. So of these 14 projects that were across the Western County, the top 3 priorities by far are the I-80 Highway 65 interchange, Highway 65 widening project, and Placer Parkway, followed by I-80 Ox Lanes, Baseline Road, and then through the rest of these 14 projects. In the Eastern County, the top 3 projects were Highway 267 pavement rehabilitation, the Highway 49 sidewalk gap closure project, and the Truckee Valley Trail, which topped out the remaining 3 projects here in the Eastern County. So I'm going to pause here to take any questions about these specific survey results before I go into findings and how it affects the RTP. Any questions about any of these activities?
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? No, seeing none? Okay. No questions, thank you.
Great.
See?
So what does this all mean for, and how does it affect the RTP? So I think the first key finding is that local concerns haven't changed. We update this RTP every so many years, and a lot of the projects and priorities and goals kind of ring true through the years we carry them on. So I think this process really validates that's because local concerns really have maintained true through these past couple years. So that's a good validation process for us. The second is that fixing highways is a top priority. That's not a surprise for any of us, but again, it's good to hear that from our communities and from folks all around that fixing highways, particularly 80 and particularly 65, are important issues for everyone. The third is that transportation funding is confusing. And so the funding survey, while it gave people the opportunity to kind of play with where the money comes from and how much it contributes to our budgets, I think I got a ton of questions of folks saying, how come it has to be this much? Or why can't I change this? Or I wanted to take this all the way down. Or and so I think as much as we can continue to educate the public and a lot of the work that we're doing in the funding strategy effort to talk about transportation funding and where it comes from, what it pays for and what it doesn't is really needed, because folks were expressing that need throughout these survey processes. The fourth is that online surveys work. Last year, or the last time we updated the RTP, we did a series of in-person meetings and maybe got 100 folks engaged with the process. And here we have 2,300 people who didn't just take a survey, but who took the time to say, I have a stop sign issue at this intersection and that intersection, and I really care about this. Or I feel this way about developer fees for this, that, and the other reason. So it's not just quantity increase in amount of outreach that we're getting from our community members, it's really high quality engagement that we're getting through these online surveys. And the fifth is that this feedback can be reused. So like I said, we have about 50,000 pieces of data that came out of these 3 surveys from all these responses put together. And I've been working with our advisory council and your guys' public works staff to figure out what to do with the comments that we got from members of the community that don't necessarily relate to the RTP. Things I was talking about where they talk about how the signalization is off on this street, or one stop sign is blocked by a tree, or those kinds of issues that are more granular, and how this information can be spread so that it can have a new life and continue to be productive. So these 5 things are the key takeaways from this process. And now I'll hand it off to Aaron.
Thank you, Kathleen. Great job. So I just want to wrap up this presentation today with a quick review of where we've been and really a look ahead for the rest of the project schedule that'll go through the end of this calendar year. So we kicked off the project back in November 2017 with just an overview of the RTP process, why we do it, the significance of it, and the process to get to where we are today. We subsequently brought the major milestones for project and work elements to the Board of Directors in May and November, and then a workshop in November. That was a big joint workshop, if you recall, with SACOG staff, and kind of presenting how the RTP fits into the SACOG's MTP and SES process. And we spent the bulk of the first part of 2019 working and coordinating with SACOG on the draft preferred scenario that their board adopted in April of 2019. So looking forward, we are now evaluating the plan's performance. We want to look at, with these investments, how do we benefit various travel performance indicators in the future? Are we reducing congestion as travel time, decreasing as a result of this? Are more people potentially riding transit with future increase in services? So we're looking at a full range of those metrics, working with SACOG and through a consultant to do some of this work. And we're also preparing the RTP chapters. Because the Regional Transportation Plan is subject to CEQA, we are also preparing an environmental impact report. This environmental impact report will look at and evaluate 21 different environmental factors. I'm sure each of you have seen one of these come through your councils and or boards at some point in time. And so it's a quite involved process to look through all the data and information that's required per CEQA. We did release a notice of preparation for the environmental impact report back on June 6th. And this evening at 6 p.m. at the PCTPA offices, we'll be hosting a scoping meeting. The purpose of the scoping meeting is to receive comments on the various environmental areas that the environmental impact report will evaluate, and in consideration for further evaluation and the preparation of that. The comment period will close on July 6th, and this information was sent to the State Clearinghouse then submits this information to responsible public agencies. Each of your public works directors or staff had received a notice also, and we also released the meeting notice to our RTP email database. So we also have this invitation out there to the public. Hopefully they'll participate in the project or the meeting to understand more about the process and how they can chime in on it. And lastly, just looking at the schedule, we're going here. In August, we'll be releasing the draft regional transportation plan document and the environmental impact report for a 45-day public review period. And we'll be coming back to the board at our December meeting for adoption of the RTP document and certification of the environmental impact report. So that's the schedule we have laid before you, closing out the end of this calendar year, and I'd be glad to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Any questions from board members? Oh, Supervisor
So
Huber.
the RTP update is supposed to be effective for how long?
The RTP update, we're required by California state law to update it every 5 years. What we have done this cycle and the prior cycle is link ours on a 4-year schedule with SACOG. And in prior cycles to that, we found that we may be starting a cycle while SACOG is finishing one, and it just became a lot more paperwork. And so syncing up with the schedule, we found a lot more consistency with the process.
Okay.
We also
And
save,
all-
I'm sorry, I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna mention that we also save a tremendous amount of funding by making it the same
Sure.
as SACOG. They do a
Yeah, that
lot of the error analysis for us.
That makes sense. Are each of the transportation planning agencies or jurisdictions that aren't represented, them individually, within SACOG doing a similar such survey? Do we know?
A similar survey?
Yes.
So SACOG, for their MTP process, did some outreach. Back in, I think it was, we'll call it fall 2018, Sierra College, they hosted a public workshop at Sierra College. And so they invited students out and participants from the community. They also did some online engagement throughout the 6-county region. I don't have the stats right now off the top of my head.
But we don't know if they're doing anything as extensive as what we did in terms of an actual survey?
They did actually do a survey. I can provide the summary of that to you. They did publish that and share it. It is on the SACOG's MTP website. I can't recall the number of respondents from Placer County they had, but they did have some fairly good information. Some of the information between our survey and theirs do sync up. They did ask questions that are more germane to their process and land use planning and transit-oriented development and maybe some other factors that were not as
That was SACOG themselves doing it?
correct.
And our data rolls up eventually to SACOG, right, for the Regional Transportation Plan?
We'll share
Well-
that with them, but this is more for our process and validating that we're putting our own prepared and locally adopted regional transportation plan.
So I guess what I'm getting at is within all the various SACOG jurisdictions, how many of them have a PCTPA equivalent?
Really just one. El Dorado County has their own PCTPA
Okay.
equivalent where SACOG oversees the 4 counties of Sacramento, Sutter,
Right.
Yuba, and
Right, so nobody else is really doing the level of surveying and detail gathering that we're doing
corrected, not at a county level.
within, on a county by county jurisdiction?
Correct.
And that's mainly because they rely on SACOG. There's only, by state law, there's only 3 planning organizations for transportation in the
Right.
region: SACOG, El Dorado County, and Placer County. And so the 4 counties within SACOG rely on SACOG to do that all for them.
Okay.
Whereas we do it separately, and the benefit for that is that in terms of transportation is that we get to set our own priorities.
Right.
And we don't have, for example, West Sacramento telling
Right.
Placer.
No, I get all that. What I'm getting at is in terms of the surveying that they have done, and you reference some consistency between our surveys and theirs. What does their survey show in terms of expanding transit opportunities? Because clearly ours tells us that the people in Placer County really aren't that interested.
Probably from a high-level synopsis, when they're looking at a 6-county area and asking questions about that, it's probably different than what we see from the Placer County area in terms of
So
response. for
it's
transit.
safe to say that in a more urban core environment, there might be more interest in expanding transit opportunities. However, in the suburban surrounding areas, there really isn't that interest.
That would be true.
And how many years do we have to see that same data repeated before people stop driving us toward what they think is the right solution for us in suburban environments?
That's a good question.
Forever.
And one other thing to point out is when we spoke about that we're seeing the same data again is what Kathleen, I think, was alluding to is things like our funding strategy, polling, and that it's very consistent with this RTP survey, and I think you're correct that we, or not, I don't think, you are correct that our priorities differ significantly from the other 4 counties in the region.
Well, and I think the message that we're seeing, and I think most of us intuitively understand, that if people see that the money they're paying is being spent on priorities with which they agree, they're okay with paying it. But when they see a train from Madera to Fresno as the headline grabber, they wonder, why are you asking me for more money when you're building this thing that nobody's ever gonna ride? And it's a fair question.
It is.
Are you done with your therapy? Any more questions for staff or comments? Anyone in the audience? I see none. Thank you
I'd
so.
like to make a
Oh, yeah. Oh, push your little button.
I'd just like to say that I took the survey. It doesn't want to go on.
Because you're,
Oh,
There you go.
got it, thank you.
all right.
I took the survey. It was very easy to understand and quite interesting in making the decision-making based on my area compared to Roseville, say. So I tried to think of the whole overall area, and so I found it very, very enlightening, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, any other comments? Alrighty, we'll move to item L, right? The Executive Director's Report.
Yes, sir. Number of items to report on today, and then at the end of my presentation, we're going to share with you some of our video work that we've been doing, and for 8065 and the funding strategy. But just some things to point out today. We'll start off today with some very good news. Yesterday at the Senate Transportation Committee, Assembly Bill 1413 passed by a vote of 7-3. And so we just accomplished the next hurdle, if you will, to have the Senate consider that, and they approved that. And now it moves on to the Senate Finance and Governance Committee. That meeting will be held on July 10th down at the Capitol. Mayor Allard and the actual California Transportation Commission itself yesterday testified on behalf of and in support of our bill. And as well as a great number of our stakeholders participated through either their representatives at the Capitol or directly themselves, including the governmental representative for Placer County came down and himself and testified, or I did the Me Too process, if you will, for the which is the normal course after the main speakers for an event like that. So we had great support for that. So we continue to work very hard on Assembly Bill 1413. We are by no means out of the woods yet, working with Assembly Member Gloria from San Diego and our 10 to 12 county coalition, but certainly a significant milestone that we met yesterday. And our lobbyist team, which is Roseville, Placer County, and ourselves are working hand in hand on a daily basis to get this thing across the finish line.
Good work.
The next thing I wanted to update you on is another great success, and some of you know about this, but we were awarded the Caltrans Sustainable Community Planning Grant for the Sacramento Placer Mobility Action Plan, or Gateway Plan. This is for phase 2 of that, and so we received a grant in excess of $600,000 to move that forward into that second phase. And why that's important is right now we're working on the first phase, which again sets us up for grant applications for, in Placer County's case, things like the third track, for that first grant phase of the SB1 funding. But then we want to program, again, these groups of projects of statewide significance through the third, fourth, and fifth phases. And so this next planning grant will allow us to go and dive into a deeper level of detail for those activities. It also includes a great public outreach component where we will actually be able to enhance some of our virtual reality to see what some of these improvements in the whole corridor will allow through virtual reality booth, if you will, that we're going to try to bring to fruition to use at public events and the like. So. And then speaking of public events, we, as part of the funding strategy, our next event we're working on is Celebrate America in Rockland on this weekend on June 28th and 29th, where we'll be showing our video, the first one that you'll see today, with Vice Mayor Bernasconi from Roseville. We are also working with our Gateway plan, where we'll have a booth, if you will, at the event where we'll be able to take public comment on the 14 jurisdiction plan that we're working on that I just mentioned. And then we'll also be showcasing our transit activities. We're actually going to have we're pretty sure we're going to have a bus of some sorts, either from likely from Roseville Transit to do some transit training, to show people how to utilize our transit vehicles and maximize our existing transit service. So that's a good event that we're going to have this weekend. The next event coming up is the Colfax Roundabout groundbreaking, where that's going to take place on Thursday, July 3rd at 10 a.m. You're all invited to participate in that, but it's a very, very important project for the community, as Director Burris would attest to, but it's going to be a great event combined in the afternoon with their 3rd of July activities. So
That's Wednesday.
I'm sorry.
You can come and dunk me in the dunk tank.
So another great event, and a representative from Congressman LaMalfa is going to join us as part of the presentation as well. Couple of more things. Tonight we have the CTC reception. We're joint hosting with SACOG and El Dorado County Transportation Commission at Urban Roots Brewery and Smokehouse. This is similar to the one that we had here in Placer County at the Falls Event Center. So we're looking forward to that event tonight. And since he's not here, I can talk about it a little bit. Is actually we're going to celebrate our Deputy Director, Luke McNeil-Caird's completion of being the moderator for a thing called the Regional Transportation Planning Agencies Group. And what that is every time there's a CTC meeting, there's actually a staff group that gets together with the staff of the CTC and the staff of Caltrans and some others to get a preliminary look at either rules or funding changes, and we can actually affect that through the staff level as well. And so that's been very advantageous for Placer County, for PCTPA, that we get kind of early reads in terms of what things are happening, so that we can tweak our programs to maximize potential funding or to know about rules that are changing in advance. And Luke's been doing that for the past year, and it's been a great opportunity for us to get this early reconnaissance, if you will. But really, Luke represents the entire region, and so it's not only good for Placer County, but it's good for the entire Sacramento region. And tonight we're going to embarrass Luke. He doesn't know that we're going to do this, but we're gonna catch him off guard, and Bonnie Gore, who's doing some of the remarks in her role as a SACOG board director, is going to haul him up there and embarrass him. So you have a little card on your dais if you would fill that out. It's to celebrate Luke's accomplishment over the past year. And then lastly, in terms of the third track project, our chair and myself attended the retirement of David Kotrowski last week with CCJPA. It's a very significant milestone, and frankly, something a bit of a worry for us on CCJPA. Our directors, Mackey and Holmes and Allard, that represent us, we need to constantly work on making sure CCJPA, which has a very large Bay Area focus, that they pay attention to us. And along those lines, we're going to be having, scheduling this fall, actually the BART director, who's actually the lead on the whole, they're actually CCJPA's staff boss, if you will. We're going to be having the BART director as well as Mr. Pageant, the new executive director. We're going to be hosting an event, either a breakfast or a lunch or something here in Placer County, and we would like the entire board to participate in that, and again, to tell them why the things like the third track are so important to Placer County. So a great opportunity that they actually suggested that they actually brought it up and wanted to do that. So it's a good sign. So with that, I'll conclude unless there's any questions of me on any of those items.
You mentioned the executive director of BART is Mr. Paget. Is he the executive director or the managing director of CC?
So there's a new managing director. Ms. Gordon, who is the managing director of BART, which is the parent organization, if you will, of under which CCJPA lies.
Right.
She is retiring, and her replacement is coming on board, and that person, who's, I don't have his name in front of me, he along with Mr. Pageant, who is the new CCJPA executive director, the two of them would come down and meet with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. Good.
So,
Any comments, questions for our executive director?
so with that, we'll play our couple videos, if you will,
Okay.
and would love to have any feedback and comment on those.
Hello, I'm Krista Bernasconi, Vice Mayor for the City of Roseville. Roseville is one of the cities represented on the board of the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, or more commonly known as PCTPA. PCTPA is an organization made up of local city and town council officials like myself who administer, fund, and manage local transportation projects in Placer County. South Placer County is one of the most desirable places to live and work in California. People and businesses relocate to our region every day for our quality of life, excellent schools, low crime rates, beautiful parks, close proximity to Sacramento, San Francisco, and Lake Tahoe. However, traffic congestion threatens our quality of life and our ability to meet the demands of our residents and businesses. The California legislature passed SB 1 and voters approved, but these funds only assist with local streets and road repair and improvements, not major projects like I-80 Highway 65 interchange design and safety improvements, or the Highway 65 widening project. PCTPA has been studying what options we have to find additional funding from the state and federal government for transportation projects, but our options are limited. One thing is for certain, we need to do something. Over the next 20 years, we expect South Placer region will grow by another 180,000 residents. Congestion will only get worse. We now find ourselves in a reality where our outdated transportation infrastructure is affecting our ability to attract and retain businesses, hurting our local economy. South Placer County drivers will see some relief later this year when we complete the first phase of the I-80 Highway 65 interchange design and safety improvements. But all of us who drive Highway 65 know that this small improvement won't be enough to fix the congestion. PCTPA has a plan to complete 3 more phases of interchange improvements and widen Highway 65 in both directions, but we need approximately $515 million to do it. Decades ago, we could have turned to state and federal sources to pay for transportation projects like these, but their funding priorities have changed. Now, only projects that have a local funding match receive priority for state and federal funding. Placer County is one of the largest counties in California without a local funding match. Let's imagine for a moment that we did have a local funding source that we could use as a match to attract money from the state and federal government for I-80 Highway 65 interchange design and safety improvements and the Highway 65 widening. What does that do for South Placer County drivers? If there was funding, I-80 Highway 65 interchange design and safety improvements and the Highway 65 widening would drastically change the transportation landscape in South Placer County and relieve congestion on our two major highways. We are doing what we can with the funding that's available, but it's not enough. We need a local funding source to fix our congested highways, to prepare for our future, and to ensure our dollars stay local. To learn more about South Placer County's funding needs, visit keepplacermoving.com.
Now we'll move on to our second video.
Interstate 80 and Highway 65 are our two major transportation corridors for residents and commuters. I'm John Allard. I'm the mayor of the city of Roseville, and just wanted to talk a little bit about Interstate 80 and Highway 65. It is estimated that I-80 carries nearly $5 million an hour in goods movement, while the Highway 65 corridor is the region's home to a burgeoning commercial and professional business district. The South Placer region's local economy is dependent upon a modern transportation system that moves people and goods efficiently and safely. Roseville has been working closely with Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Caltrans, the cities of Rockland and Lincoln, and Placer County to improve Highway 65 and the I-80 Highway 65 interchange. Fixing an interchange that connects two major corridors is not a simple fix. The overall solution includes a comprehensive look at how traffic circulates along both highway corridors and along adjacent local streets. PCTPA and its partners were able to assemble $50 million from 5 different funding sources to pay for the first phase of this project, which includes adding a third lane on northbound Highway 65 from I-80 to Pleasant Grove and improvements to the Galleria Boulevard Stanford Ranch Road interchange. Construction on the first phase started last April, and today the construction crews have completed the final deck of a new lane on Highway 65. This structure was reinforced with 3.5 million pounds of steel. The concrete poured on top of the reinforcements equals 12,000 cubic yards, which is enough concrete to fill 150 residential swimming pools. Improvements to the interchange will eliminate the traffic weaving as motorists exit from Highway 65 northbound and try to make their way over to turn left onto 5 Star Boulevard near Costco, making it safer. The Interstate 80 Highway 65 interchange was designed more than 30 years ago when our county's population was around 136,000. Today our population has more than doubled, and the I-80 Highway 65 interchange now acts as a bottleneck for travelers in both corridors. Unfortunately, with traffic congestion comes many more collisions.
In my 16 years working with the Rockland Police Department, I have unfortunately witnessed numerous accidents along the Interstate 80 Highway 65 corridor. By improving the interchange infrastructure, I hope to see less congestion, giving way to less accidents, and increased safety for our residents and visitors.
As it stands, the interchange is not suited to safely accommodate the amount of people that drive on it every day. Roseville is home to 2 major regional hospitals, and delays on either I-80 or State Route 65 mean emergency ambulances have to make detours through our city to get patients to the hospital.
With the number of accidents on the increase on Highway 65 and Interstate 80, we're certainly concerned about our ability to respond to and arrive at the scene of an accident in an expeditious manner. The quicker that we can get to an accident, the better. And if you think about it, any traffic backups are going to cause a delay in transportation of anybody who's requiring medical treatment from the scene to a hospital.
A little over a year ago, I was injured in a bicycle accident near Lincoln. I was being transported by ambulance to a Roseville hospital, and I was in a lot of pain. I was in a neck brace. I did not appreciate all the twists, turns, and bumps that the ambulance had to take in order to avoid the interchange and get me to the hospital. It was painful.
By improving the infrastructure at the corridor of Highway 65 and Interstate 80, we will be saving lives.
While the first phase will provide some relief for travelers right away, it will only address northbound traffic from the interchange to Pleasant Grove Boulevard. It will not address any southbound traffic problems or the anticipated growth in traffic over the next 30 years. To address the future, we will need to secure an additional $400 million, which won't be easy since we've tapped most all our resources to fund the first phase, and we lack local matching funds for any future phases of the interchange, the widening of Highway 65, and many other congestion improvements in South Placer County. We look forward to working with the community in solving this problem. We want everyone to make it to their destination safely, so it is imperative that we find a way to fully fund this and many other critical planned traffic congestion problems. It's time to finish the job.
So our next video in this series, which we're working on right now, is going to be related to economic development. And so there are council members from the city of Lincoln and also from the city of Rockland that are participating in our AIM filming team that will talk about the difficulty of attracting and retaining businesses to the area, the South Placer area, because of traffic congestion. We're also going to be having some local real estate representatives participate in that video, as well as some actual businesses that have made location decisions based upon their feelings with traffic in that area. So that'll be something coming out this fall. Also this fall, we're very happy to announce that we're going to be finishing the first phase of 8065 way ahead of schedule. And so we are wrapping up the Galleria Stanford Ranch interchange here in the next few weeks. You'll be seeing some striping and everything, the pavings, and be coming in place literally as we speak. And then we'll finish the deck shortly thereafter. So we're looking at a ribbon cutting event probably around late August, early September, which we would ask you all to participate in. We're also working with the two chambers of commerce, Roseville and Rockland, into somewhat of a community celebration. And what that entails is the residents along that corridor where we did that construction endured a lot of difficult noise and other issues, and we wanted to thank them for bearing with us. So we're working with those two chambers to do some type of community celebration, potentially at something like Hot Chili Cool Cars or Quarry Park or something like that. So that ends my unusually long executive director's report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and would love to get your feedback on these videos and topics that we should be working on next to educate the public on transportation planning or issues related to congestion. Thank you.
So the project I-8065 corridor project that we're working on now is ahead of schedule,
Yes.
but is it under budget?
We'll see. We think so, but I don't have an answer for you on that yet. I'm very hopeful that it will be on budget. Whether it's under budget, I don't know that as of yet. So we have to get to that finish line. I don't want to speak too soon.
All right, great. Any comments regarding the videos? Supervisor Gould.
The only observation I had was that I like the messaging, what I was hearing in terms of what, particularly in John's video. The audio track that underlaid it, though, was a bit foreboding. It was a bit ominous. I don't know if that was on purpose throughout. I mean, because he's saying a lot of things that are very positive, a lot of stuff that's good news in there, and yet that kind of ominous.
We did that was done on purpose, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because
To
it
switch
reminded
from
me of those
that-
commercials you see on TV where they're like, for 10 cents a day, you can help a child in another country. And
Yeah. I don't know, there's something about that audio was a little too unnerving. I was looking for Jason in the mask to show up.
Well, maybe something
Chainsaw.
in between for the next
Yeah,
one. In between,
and or just,
two, yeah.
you know, during that part that's good news, maybe the audio should reflect we have good news, because, I don't know.
we'll work on that.
That's all.
Any other comments regarding the video?
Oh, actually, I wanted to, in one of my items, I'm sorry, to go back in the planning grant. One of our staff members actually played a huge role in writing that grant application and putting together all of our activities. It was a group effort, but we had one person that really took the lead on that, and she's doing a wonderful job, and that's Kathleen Hanley. And so Kathleen,
Thank you, Kathleen.
pulled that all together and did a great job and got us a really good grant. So.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yes, Director Baker.
And it's their 1-year anniversary too. So.
Oh, wow.
Happy anniversary.
One thing, videos are very good. There are some hot spots, I think, within each one of our communities that really get hit when the 8065 or 80 in general are backed up. That might be some messaging. I know, like, right through Loomis is one that I see the most, is right on Taylor Road. When 80's backed up, Taylor Road.
Yeah.
And so I know that those happen in Rockland, they happen in Roseville, and some of those major communities. That might be something to focus on, that, hey, by alleviating the problem here, we alleviate the problem here. And so maybe taking it a little more on that local level and showing kind of where those local impacts are through each one of our communities might be a good one also.
Absolutely, and one other one that was mentioned was with the Director Janda will, I'm sure, talk about is Sunset. We've actually already taken some video on Sunset, so we're probably going to use that one. But you're right, and maybe even now is a good time with the rehabilitation of 80 right now. There's quite a bit of traffic, I'm sure, on Taylor. So
yeah, you hit. I mean, any holiday weekend. I mean, you got a holiday weekend coming up. I mean, you just look on any day. The more travelers headed up 80, the more congested it gets. The worse it gets on some of our surface streets. So I think some of that would kind of hit home, I think, to a lot of our residents.
Absolutely, I think that would help. That's a good point, Brian. Yeah, not only Sunset, but neighborhoods through Midas, the corridor, the old golf course. They definitely get impacted during commute hours because of the 80, 65 backup, and folks, you know, with technology, Waze, and Google Maps, you know, directing people off to side streets. That type of messaging, I think, would really hit voters and, you know, who want a solution and could see direct results.
Knowledge. I see another. I see a couple lights on. Anybody else? All right, we're all good. Okay. Any more direction to staff? Are you finished with your?
yes, sir. I'm
Any other direction to staff? I just want to say that I was joined with Auburn Mayor Mackey and Supervisor Cindy Gustafson at the groundbreaking for the sidewalk, the rehabilitation project on Highway 49, and they're going to town. They're working on it already, so glad to see that finally happening.
yes, as you exit today to go, especially those members that are going down the hill,
Yeah.
you might not want to take Nevada Street.
Right.
So yes, there's the Caltrans project that you mentioned, the shop project is starting, and it'll be mostly at nighttime.
Yeah.
But very significant impact on Highway 49
Right.
and in the city of Auburn, which is another great success story with the ATP funding that they got, that we helped them with. That project is starting, that one's during the day, and so probably best to look at some alternate routes or in my own experience, leave 5 minutes early before you need to go somewhere, so.
Right. Okay.
So,
All right, yeah, I found that the hard way twice.
yes,
So,
same here.
Doesn't take long for you.
no, right. Okay. All right, any other comments? Seeing none, there are informational items for you if you wish to look at them. And our next regularly scheduled meeting, PCTPA board meeting, is July 24th of 2019.
Yes, sir. We, just to say a little bit about that really quick, we normally take July off, but we may have a time-sensitive item,
Okay.
but we won't know kind of till the last minute on this. So just a heads up, we are planning to have July, but we may have to give you a last-minute cancellation on that, so.
All right, no problem. All righty, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you.